Torah, the parshat Shemot, page 98. Let's go. Okay, so now the Rabbi is explaining. Yesterday we learned all about Mishnah. The Mishnah is the Tanoim, with the Mishnah is the level of Chokhmah. The Tanoim, the strong ones, are the ones that have the ability to bring down Chokhmah Velukus into Mishnah. And therefore, the difference between Moshe and Eliyahu. Bottom line is that you're not going to be redeemed in the merit of Mishnah and Tzedakah, because that's bringing Elukus down into the world. But then the pasuk continues after the wives, the queens, which are the wives. Then it says Upilakshim elu abraises. Then the pasuk uses the word concubines, and the Medrash says it refers to the brises, which is the same era as the Mishnah, but not put into the Mishnah. He says, why a brais is considered a pilegesh? Kamasha pilegesh. When a concubine, the king is not as often with her as he is with his wife, and it's also done in a hidden form. The same thing, Mishnah is continuous revelation of Chokhmah Vashem. Braisa is seasonal. In other words, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. The Gemara says, any Braisa not learned in the yeshiva of Chia and Rabbi, they were two of the top students of Rabbi. So when Rabbi wrote the Mishnah, and they left out things outside, so certain things outside Braisa, Braisa means outside, because it was left outside the Mishnah. So therefore it says that a Braisa that was not learned in the yeshiva of Chia and Rabbi is not authentic. They took the authentic Braisas and compiled them into what's called Tisefta or whatever. So you see that a Braisa is not always correct. Mishnah is always correct, and therefore he says, She'enim v'adorim abrudim, because they're not for sure accepted opinions of the halacha. Al derech, like it says, the Gemara says like this: when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, in the Avelis of Moshe Rabbeinu, 3,000 halachas were forgotten. 3,000 halachas were forgotten. That's what it says. And the Gemara says the one that restated them was Osnil ben Kenas. It was one of the Shefta, one of the great tzaddikim. So, but and the same why? Because they don't have this level of chokhmah from above.
3,000 halacha? How many halacha we have? 3,000
millions. As it says later, we'll see, Allah Masay Mispah, there's an infinite amount of halachas.
How are they related?
Who? Still Ben Kenas, not related. Still Ben Kenas was later on.
No, I'm saying, what's the shaykhus that he brought it back?
He was the greatest person, so he was the one that did it. Okay, skip to the end of the parentheses. Mashenke masnitin. But a Mishnah masnitin mean a tiyuf tevein lahashiv. But the Mishnah, they do refute from. And this is what it says, that Michol Eimed or Makriv Neshamas HaTzadikim Magabi HaMizbeach. There's a very interesting Gemara. It says that Michol, the guy angel up there, stands and sacrifices Neshamas of Tzadikim on the Mizbeach up there. Something that's very strange Gemara, Medrash. The Medrash says that Malach Michal, up there, one of his functions is take the Neshamas of Tzadikim and burn them on the Mizbeach upstairs. Now, obviously it's not physical. What it means is, when you burn something on the Mizbeach, it becomes part of Hashem. It becomes, God's food. It becomes internalized with Hashem. So what he actually does, the Rebbe is explaining over here, he refines certain neshamas of tzaddikim that they can go even to a higher level. Just like fire cleans, so to speak. So the spiritual fire of the Mizbeach up there cleanses the neshamas of tzaddikim to become even higher. But that's not a constant thing. It's temporary. So that's the inyan of Allah Mesei Mispar. In other words, the Alter Rebbe is explaining like this. In order for a neshama in Gan Eden to be able to handle that infinite revelation of godliness, because a neshama is still a creature, a creation, it's still whatever, it's not a B'riya Yesh Miyayin, but it's an emanation of Hashem. So therefore, the neshama needs Torah to be able to bring down and the garment for the neshama to be able to handle that level of kedusha. So he explains first Mishnah, now he explains Brisa. And he says, "V'alom esay mizbod elu halacha she'memer sameroim d'lei masfinim minei tiyufta klal." And the third thing the pasuk says, "Alamis" means young girls, infinite young girls. And the Medrash says, what does that refer to? The teachings of the Tanoim and Amiroim of the Gemara. And the Gemara says on that you can't ask a question. Meaning, Gemara Razal, Gavra Gava Karamis. You can ask a question from Rava and Abaya. They disagree. From a Mishnah on Rava and Abaya, you can ask a question, but you can't ask a question on Abaya from Rava or Rava from Abaya. Why? Because they're disagreeing. Meaning, these are all the degradation levels of Torah. The ultimate level, high level of Torah is Mishnah. I'm talking about the oral Torah. Is Mishnah. Then Braisa. Then Halachas of Amiroim. And the reason Shenekra Alamis Lashim Besuleis, and the reason Alamis means young girls. Actually means virgins, by the way. So he says that means like Kiblis Dechad Ikri, that they didn't have intimacy yet. Meaning like this. Male is Chachma, female is Bina. We learned that already, right? So Yud Kevavke is Chachma, Bina, Zah Malchus, father, mother, son, daughter. Now, when it says Allah Mesei Mispar, that's a much lower level than even Braisa. And he says that refers to the sayings of the Gemara, the people of the Gemara, the Amiroim. He says, what does it mean they're virgins, they didn't have a male? The male represents Chochmah Vashem. They didn't have a unity yet with the level of a male, meaning Chochmah, because Chochmah doesn't reveal itself in the world of Bria. Meaning like this. We know, that's the Chassidus 101. There's Yud Kei Vav Kei, there's Chochmah Bina, six fetus, Malchus. There is Bria Atzilus, Bria Yitzir Asiyah. Okay? So it says in Kabbalah that the four letters of Hashem's name correspond with the four worlds. Yud is Atzilus, Hey is Bria, Vav is Yitzira, and Hey is Asiyah. And then it says like this, the Yud of Yud Kei Vav Kei reveals itself in Atzilus, the Hey in Bria, the Vav in Yitzira, and the last Hey in the world of Asiyah. What does that mean in a practical sense? Yud is Chachma, Hey is Bina, Vav is the six Midas, and the last Hey is Malchus. Which means, in Atzilus shines the letter Yud, meaning the level of Chachma of Hashem shines in Atzilus. What does that mean that the Chachma of Hashem shines in Atzilus? Chachma, like we said, there's two words. Koach ma is bittul. Atzilus is a world of bittul, Exile. It's close to Hashem. So Atzilus is not Bria, which is Yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing. But Atzilus is an emanation of God, not a creation, which is Bria. Bria means creation, something from nothing. So Atzilus is a world still of bittul. Therefore, like we learned in Pasuk Chaliyah, whatever, all those Maimorim, that the 10 Sfiras of Atzilus, they're one with Hashem. Okay, because Atzilus is the world of bittul. The Alter Rebbe explained Mishnah and Braisa from the era of the Tanoim is the world of Atzilus. The question is, Mishnah Chochmah is constantly shining, Braisa once in a while, but Chochmah shines there. Then you come to the Gemara. The Gemara is a lower level than Mishnah. That's why you can refute a Gemara from a Mishnah, but you can't refute a Mishnah from a Gemara. Right? You can't ask a question on a Mishnah because the Gemara says differently. If anything, the Gemara is wrong because the Mishnah is right. Because the Mishnah is a higher level. So it says in Kabbalah that Gemara, Talmud, is the world of Bria. Now in the world of Bria, there is no Chochmah revealed. It's only Bina. The Hay is revealed in Bria. So it's not the same level of Kedusha. If a Gemara doesn't have the same level of Kedusha that Mishnah has. Or Braisa for that matter. So he says,
Where is Alter Rebbe getting from?
where is all this from? Arizal.
No, where are we going with this? Where is he going? Where is he taking us?
Well, if you remember at the beginning of the Maimer, the Alter Rebbe asked the question, why does he recount the Jewish people?
Right.
And the connection between Yitzias Mitzrayim and Mashiach, which is through Torah, Liban Hilchus, right? Just think over there, Vayimaros Chayayim, by then they had Torah, and Mitzrayim, the Golus of Mitzrayim's purpose was to refine the Jews to go to Matan Torah, which is the revealed Torah. Our Golus is the refining to come to the ultimate Torah of Revelation of Mashiach. So he said, but you need Torah to do that. So he's explaining the whole concept of what Torah is. So he says, you have written Torah, okay, 24 books of Tanakh, and then you have Mishnah, then you have Braisa, then you have Gemara. But these are all levels of preparing the world for Mashiach. Therefore, in order for Mashiach to come, you need Gemara, because you have to refine a lower level. Many of the Tanoim of the Mishnah were during the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Many of them. Until Rabbi Kiva, and his students. But they were in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. Over there was a great... Hillel lived 100 years before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, the Gemara says. Yeah? So Hillel was in the time of the great revelation of Kedusha. So that was one refining. But then you need to have another refining. Now, because the goal, it's getting lower in the body, so to speak, so the levels are lower, so you need to refine a lower level. Right? Now, Mishnah refines Atzilus, but you need to get lower. So you have Talmud, which is Bria, because you need to refine a lower level of Bria. And then he's going on with that. And then we can understand how Torah refines the world and the Jew to be able to get Matan Torah and Mashiach.
Which level is Tehillim and all these things?
That's Torah Shebiksav, that's scriptures. That's even higher.
I heard the Rabbanim, whatever they decree or say, actually supersedes the Torah.
What? No, it doesn't supersede Torah. It says, the Torah says that you should be stricter. Chamurim divrei seifim yesim divrei Torah, because people have a tendency of not listening to rabbis. I mean, Torah, it's the book, the Bible, But, so therefore Torah says sometimes you have to be stricter to enforce the power of the rabbis, not us rabbis, I'm talking about the Gemara, and the Chachamim. Yeah, you have to enforce it, so the Torah says 1 minute. You have to be stricter. Because these people have a tendency of not listening to, versus the Chumash, but you're not going to listen. It's different. People have more respect for the written law than the oral law. Because the oral law people say, hey, the guy made a mistake, he did this, yeah.
It's just the rabbis.
That's why, by the way, even in learning, in an extra vav of Chumash, you can learn out countless halachas. Every letter is measured. Mishnah, every letter is not measured like it is in Chumash. It's still measured. The fact that the Mishnah uses a certain term rather than another term, the Gemara learns out halachas from. But it's not as, for lack of a better word, severe. It's not as exact, as strict as it is. Therefore, you know exactly how many letters there are in Chumash. Precisely. In Gemara, nobody, it doesn't matter. It could be with a vav, without a vav. It doesn't do anything. But generally speaking, Mishnah is more precise in the wording than Braisa, which is more precise than the Gemara, which is more precise than the Rishonim and Achreinim, and that,
And the written one you don't have to understand, but the oral
you have to understand it, but you get the mitzvah of learning Torah without understanding it. Because Torah Shebiksav is not understanding. Even in Torah, just like he said, Mishnah is Chachma, and Halacha is the level of Bina Bria, but in Torah itself, you have Torah Shebiksav is Chachma, and Torah Shebal Peh is Bina. Because Torah Shebiksav, Torah, Chumash, is very precise. It's like short and sweet. Torah says one statement: on Shabbos, don't do work. Lo sasa kol malacha. 4 words. And you have a big tractate of the Gemara Shabbos. It's big this, and halacha is like this. That's based on those 4 words. You know what I mean? The Torah says about a guy wants to break up with his wife because of law sefer krisis, v'nasim biyada. Okay, and then 6 words or 10 words. Yeah, from those 10 words, the Gemara learns out tractate called Gittin, which has 90-something pages, and sections of halacha and discussions and from a few words. Yeah, there's a Gemara. One of the hardest Gemaras is Yavamis. A guy dies without children. The brother, yeah. In Torah, it's one pasuk, and you have a massive Gemara called Yavamis, which is complicated. One of the hardest Masechtas in Shas.
You're still grappling.
Yeah, and it still goes on. Allah is saying Mispar. He's going to say halachas even later generations is more. You can't. So, all this is refining of lower things than they had. For instance, the Rebbe said many times, Hashem created a new thing in the world, a new device, internet, whatever it may be. Why did Hashem create it? It says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, whatever God created in the world, He created for His glory. Now, what do you mean for His glory? It's not an ego thing. God created everything. Everything. The Mishnah says everything. It means everything, not 99%. Everything Hashem created was there to glorify God with it. Not that God has an ego. I'm in front of the shul. To glorify God. That means anything Hashem created, even devices that seemingly can drag a person down very low, like all these internet things, they're doing it. Marriages are killed, people are, whatever it is, it's crazy, yeah? But the fact is Hashem created it. So what's the role of a Jew? To elevate it. Utilize it the right way. You can utilize it for the wrong way and kill yourself. So it's like the same thing. Hashem created a knife and a fire. Yeah, Hashem, is a knife good or bad? It depends what you do with it. If you cut a piece of cake, it's good. If you kill somebody, it's bad. Fire can cook, fire can destroy. Water can take each one of the 4 elements we learned. Fire, air, earth, and water. Water could be great. You can have a flood. You can have earth is great. You can have an earthquake. You can have air is good. You can have a hurricane. So what is the mission of the Jew? So yes, a Jew should not put themselves into testy types of position, of situations where you're tested. But the fact is, what is the purpose when Hashem created television and when Hashem created, as it keeps going down? They said the downfall of the American family started with the invention of television. Like this, before television, what do people do? I'm sure they sat on the porch at night. They weren't talking about goyim, they didn't learn, yeah? They would sit on the porch. What else was there to do? Sit on the porch, talk to your neighbor, talk to your kids, make babies. You know, there was a family structure. All of a sudden, and people were talking to each other. All of a sudden they have television, everybody's glued to one thing. But then it got even worse. Because when there was one television in the house, at least the family was watching the same show. They had something in common. Then people became more affluent, so they had 3 televisions. So the father has one, the mother has one, and the 1.5 kids that every family has, or something like the 1.5 kids, whatever it is. So they have,
1.7.
So one set, and then it got today. Years ago, you wanted to speak to your son, yeah? Let's say, a married son. You called the house. Sometimes the daughter-in-law answers the phone, yeah? So you say, hello, how are you? Now you want your son, you call your son. You don't even speak to your daughter-in-law. No, I'm saying, as the world digressed closer, but this is a plan. This is getting closer to Mashiach, where the darkness is greater, but at the same time, the devices could be used to ultimate low. But look what you can accomplish today with the internet, that in 1 second, 1 million people can learn Torah.
Yeah.
So if you use it for good things, but that's why Hashem brought it. Because the world is so dark, we need to lighten up the world more. Think about it. There's no better way of enlightening the world with internet. Because look at Zoom. I mean, why did they wish to make COVID? Why did they wish to make COVID? Because then Zoom became. And Zoom is a phenomenal accomplishment when you use it the right way. People can learn Torah. And therefore everybody has a Zoom class. No, when you had a class, 5, 6 people came. You have a Zoom class, you have much more, and then they can look at it later. And that's because it's closer to Mashiach. That's what's happening. So yes, from one side, the device is worse. But if you know how to use it, you can't get anything better.
And all of this was given to Moshe
Yeah.
in 40 days,
Yep. All of Torah.
including the Torah.
He's asking about the prediction.
No, not good. Oral Torah, anything.
Everything was given Moshe Rabbeinu 40 days. But in those 40 days, Hashem didn't talk to him about internet and cell phones. Hashem gave him general guidelines. That based on the general guidelines, like Gemara doesn't talk about electricity on Shabbos. Gemara doesn't talk about it. But from the rules of the Gemara, you know what the halach of electricity is, or cell phones, or internet, or medical things. From the Gemara, you'll know what the halach is. The Gemara doesn't know about heart transplants. The Gemara didn't know about organ transplants. The Gemara didn't know about COVID, or cancer, or God forbid any other. But from Gemara, you learn it. Yeah, from the guidelines and those were given to Moshe Rabbeinu Har Sinai.